Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing another scary story that is apparently true. I went ahead and did a little extra digging on this one just to check on the validity of it, and I do actually believe this is a true story. So I am really looking forward to sharing this with you guys today. I also want to say before I get started, thank you to everyone who was so supportive of the first scary story that I did. I wasn't sure how it was going to play out on the channel, if it was going to be well received or not, but you guys were super cool about it and just as interested in it as I am. So I'm so glad, because I thought, you know, even though I'm still going to do makeup looks and reviews and things like that, that when I wasn't buying stuff, that it would be fun to do this in the interim just to kind of add it into the content, because I really do find scary movies and scary stories, true scary stories and things like that, I find it very interesting. But to my friends who don't like it, listen, it's totally fine. I am going to still do the content with hauls and makeup looks and reviews and whatnot. It's still going to be happening, so feel free to come around for the next one. I am not offended, I'm not upset, it's totally okay. But to my friends who like these types of videos like I do, I'm so glad to have you here, and we are about to get started. But before I do, I just want to also say, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, because it really does help me out a lot. I really do appreciate it, and it would be super awesome to have you here as a part of my YouTube family. And with that being said, let's get into the video. Okay guys, hair's up, eyes are primed, and we're ready to get started. Today I'm going to be using the Pat McGrath Bronze Seduction eyeshadow palette, and I'm just going to share this story with you. Let me grab my little mirror. Miss Piggy, she's going to hang out with us today for said scary story because, you know, we love her. On September 6, 2009, Melvin and his two friends were hunting in the Elk Mountain area of the Santa Fe Forest near Pico, New Mexico. He told his friends that he wanted to head down the trail about 150 yards ahead. He carried with him his .44 revolver and his bow and arrow and a hunting knife. Now, he had gotten lost before on hunting trips, so straying too far from camp made him nervous and extra cautious. It was around 4:30 p.m. when he left his friends to walk the 150 yards. He said that he'd be back before dark, but Melvin never returned. His Jeep was still there, parked beside the camp, with all of his gear inside, including his backpack, his cell phone, and his GPS. He usually took his GPS with him, but perhaps he had thought because he wasn't really going that far away from camp, it wasn't really necessary. At the time of his disappearance, Melvin was very fit. He owned his own gym in Santa Fe. He also held a black belt in Taekwondo. His hunting style was more of like the long kind of wait, a slow-paced hunting style rather than an active hunting style. And by that, I guess I want to say that he wasn't just like jumping all over the place. He took his time when he was on these hunting trips. Melvin was married and he had a daughter who was at the time attending a local college. His wife had said that she had had no knowledge of him having any health problems or any reason why he would disappear. She also didn't believe that he would willingly leave his family. When tracker dogs were brought in, they followed his scent for approximately 100 yards along the trail. Police could find no sign of foul play. They presumed that he'd wandered off and gotten lost and then stranded. His brother-in-law had been one of the two men out hunting with him that day. When they separated around 4:30 p.m., the other men wanted to go along the trail while Melvin wanted to hunt close to camp. The two men returned around 7 p.m. with no sign of Melvin at the camp. I mean, his Jeep and his belongings, everything was still there, but Melvin was nowhere to be found. They called out, but there was no answer. They even honked their horns and fired off their rifles into the air a few times just to let Melvin know that they'd had concern. They were trying to understand why he wasn't responding to them, but still, they got no answer. So the hours passed and they began to grow more nervous, and they decided to contact the local authorities. At first, they weren't terribly worried. I mean, Melvin was in really good shape. He had a black belt. He was fully armed. He had a hunting knife. He knew the area. They weren't really worried that he wasn't going to be able to take care of himself. So when they did alert authorities, they were still pretty reassured that everything was fine and that it really wasn't a big deal. But the search for Melvin turned out to be one of the biggest ever in the history of this state, involving hundreds of volunteers. Trained search and rescue personnel, trackers with dogs, ATVs, and helicopters all were involved in this search for Melvin. The trackers followed Melvin's scent, but it stopped abruptly, approximately about 100 yards away from camp. And that's where the dogs would become confused and they didn't know which direction to go in because they'd completely lost his scent. Not to mention the fact that his footprints just stopped. Some had speculated that Melvin had run off with another woman, staging his own disappearance so that he could leave his family behind by backtracking over his tracks. But his Jeep was still there and there were no other tire tracks. Not to mention that Melvin also had a bad knee, so he really couldn't run anywhere. And even if he had just run off, the dogs would have been able to pick up his scent. He had a brand new pair of women's jeans inside his Jeep, giving rise to this theory, but his wife was unaffected by that. She had said that Melvin was not a tall man, and when he purchased jeans, he just bought whatever fit him. It didn't matter if they were women's jeans or not. He just wanted something that fit. She didn't believe that he was cheating and had run off with another woman. It just wasn't the Melvin that she knew. Not to mention the fact that his bank cards were never touched. He would also be leaving behind an incredibly successful business and his daughter. He didn't have any known enemies either. People don't just disappear. But apparently in Melvin's case, they do. The search and rescue teams continued for weeks, but they came up with absolutely nothing. No answers for his family or friends. He was just simply gone. Approximately 5 miles away from where Melvin had disappeared, so too did an elderly woman. 71-year-old Emma Tressip vanished en route to a religious retreat, and all that remains of her is a small statue of a cross and an angel. It was in New Mexico, August 31st, 1998. She was leaving Stillwater, Oklahoma on her road trip to Pecos, where she would join the retreat at the Benedictine Monastery. Now, she had attended this retreat several times before, so she had made this road trip. She knew the road. She was very familiar with it. She'd been driving along, stopping for gas, and was even seen on the security footage at a gas station in Santa Fe. Her car was found on a rural road near Gloretta and Pecos. The road is known locally as Camino del Diablo, or the Devil's Road. Her car had crashed into a large rock. The most reasonable explanation is that she left her car in search of help after the accident, leaving behind her cell phone. Perhaps she wasn't getting any reception, I'm not exactly sure, but she did leave her cell phone behind. No one could explain why she'd taken the road in the first place. It was in the middle of the heavily wooded Santa Fe National Forest. It was a foresty road. It was completely unpaved, had a lot of rocks, and would have caused damage to anyone's car. So why she took that road was a complete mystery. It wasn't a sensible or appealing choice for anyone, not to mention someone who was at the age of 71, a sensible woman who would know not to drive down that particular road. To get to the monastery from Interstate 25, she would have had to have taken Highway 63. When her car was found locked on this forest road, it was 15 miles from Route 63 where she should have been. The New Mexico Search and Rescue Team, the local police, the FBI, even private detectives all took DNA samples. This case was extensively public, and they even consulted psychics trying to find Emma, but with no success. When they found her car on that foresty road, her footprints, the only ones that they were able to find, were of her just simply circling the car. No other footprints were found of her walking away from the vehicle at any time. To those who were investigating, it just seemed as though she just continued to circle the car and never went anywhere. And from their extensive search, they could also tell that she was completely alone. No one was with her. There were no other fingerprints inside or outside the car other than her own. There was no sign of a struggle. There was nothing. Her purse was gone, but her phone remained. Experienced trackers couldn't even find any direction in which she had gone. And dogs could only pick up the scent from around the car. Anything beyond that, they lost the scent because there wasn't a scent to follow. And with there being no sign of a struggle, no sign of foul play, and not being able to find any other fingerprints, and knowing that no one else was with her, they had nothing to go on. David Martinez, a state police investigator, had stated that it was like she had vanished off the face of the earth. They were never able to find any answers. And to this day, both Melvin and Emma were never seen again. What happened to them is still unknown. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hop off, zhuzh up the rest of my face, hop back on, and we are going to finish up today's video. And this is the finished look. So let's go ahead and talk about this story just a little bit more before we go on about our day. This one is particularly interesting because all of these people that came together to try and find both Melvin and Emma were not able to do so. Their footprints, everything stops abruptly with no lead whatsoever. It's almost as if something or someone showed up and just lifted them off their feet and carried them away. But to where and who? Their bodies were never found. Nothing was ever found. There was never any answer. Their footprints just ended. It's like they vanished into thin air. with no answer whatsoever still to this day. So I really find this story just mind-blowing. It really does get my wheels turning as to what could have possibly happened to these people? Where did they go? So I really look forward to talking to you guys about this in the comments, and I'm so glad that you guys are liking these videos because it really is a lot of fun, and I'm so glad that I went ahead and was able to use this eyeshadow palette today. I love this. I do not use this palette enough, and the eyeshadows in here are absolutely beautiful. I really like how the look turned out. I really like the story, it being true and unsolved and so incredibly mysterious. I don't know. From the extra creepy ghosty stories and to the unexplained mysteries, I just love this sort of thing. So it's really great to have your guys' company in this because it just makes it that much more fun. Anyway, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, stay alert.